Good morning, members, and the House will come to order. 19th day of the session, March the 4th, 2026. 68th Wyoming Legislature Budget Session. Chief Clerk, ladies and gentlemen, if we would please make our way to the chamber, please call the roll.
Convening roll call for the 19th day, March 4th, 2026. Alamand, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Brady, Bratton, Brown Gary, Brown Landon, Byron, Campbell Elisa, Campbell Kevin, Chestick, Clouston, Connolly, Davis, Erickson, Filer, Bornstrom, Geringer, Guggenmoss, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Heft, Jarvis, Johnson, Kelly, excused, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Lean, Locke, Lucas, McCann, Nicholas, Ottman, Pendergraft, Posey, Provenza, Riggins, Rodriguez Williams, Schmid, Sherwood, Singh, Smith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Thayer, Washut, Wasserberger, Webb, Weber, Worf, Williams, Winter, Wiley, Yin. Mr. Speaker. Here. Strock.
We'll leave it open for a few moments. Next, ladies and gentlemen, prayer of the day will be led by Representative Singh. Representative Singh, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's stand. Almighty and everlasting God, your word declares, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and the world and those who dwell therein. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but the purpose of the Lord will stand. You change times and seasons. You remove kings and set up kings. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. All that are from the dust, and to the dust all return. You have made everything beautiful in its time, and you have set eternity in the human heart. If we ascend to heaven, you are there. If we make our bed in Sheol, you are there. As the eyes of a servant looks to the hand of the master, so our eyes look to you, Lord our God. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If any lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without reproach. Show us your ways, O Lord. Teach us your paths. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Search us, O God, and know our hearts. Test us and know our thoughts. For we are sure that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Establish the work of our hands, for you are our judge, and you are our lawgiver, and you are our king. And though we deliberate, you reign. And though we decide, you rule. And though we act, you alone are sovereign. In your holy name, amen.
Representative Heiner,
Privilege of the floor.
please.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative, go ahead. Majority Leader.
Members of the body, this morning, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission issued a construction permit for the Kemmer nuclear reactor. This is the first time in over a decade that a commercial reactor has been authorized and permitted, and the first time in over 40 years that a non-light water reactor has been commercially authorized to be built. So this is a big step forward for our state and especially for my district.
Thank you, Majority Leader, for sharing that with us as we see Wyoming continue to move ahead in the energy sector and continue to dominate in that sector. Representative, okay, Chief Clerk, please close out the roll if we can.
Harshman. Wharf. 60 present, 2 excused.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. Representative Filer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How are you this morning?
I'm fantastic, Representative Filer. How are you? Did you have a good
Great.
evening?
I did. I had a great evening. And I came up with this really cool joke.
On your own?
No.
Okay.
All right, folks. What do you call someone with no body and no nose? Nobody knows.
Thank you, Representative Filer. Okay. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of March 3rd, 2026 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Jarvis and Posey.
Thank you, Reading Clerk. Doctor of the Day is Mr. Douglas Edgren, MD. He will be here with us for a half day. And then also our Nurse of the Day is Mary Ponce, registered nurse. She will be here looking after us and hopefully, again, like I say, not necessarily needing to help us, but being here available in time of need. But we are thankful for their willingness to be here with us. Do we have any messages from the Senate? No messages from the Senate. All right, no enrolled acts at this point. Reports from standing committees? No reports from standing committees. That's starting to wane. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, unless somebody else has something more important than this, unless somebody's getting ready to do a privilege of the floor, because I see a bunch of young, very sharp-looking men and women pulling into our South Gallery. Yep. Representative Fornstrom, can you introduce us to this incredibly bunch of young people and their
Thank you, Mr.
caretakers?
Speaker. Privilege.
Please, by all means.
In the South Gallery, we have some Colts, I believe, from Burns Elementary. I don't know whether they're Colts or Bronx, but I think Colts. So, and their teacher, Christina Patterson. So they're here visiting the Capitol today. Let's give them a hand.
Welcome Burns Elementary to the house. That one young gentleman up there with the blue shirt on's got a buckle the size of a 57 Chevy hubcap. I'd like to know what that young man won that for. I'm sure it was a good event. So thank you guys for being here with us. We appreciate you. And teachers, we thank you for what you're doing and the time that you expend on these young people and the difference that you make in their lives. We're very fortunate and very thankful for that. So glad you're here. Appreciate you being here, taking time. Okay, next, anything else for us? We're moving into second reading, ladies and gentlemen. Get right into it. Bills on second reading. First Senate file for our consideration, Senate File 39, reading clerk.
Senate File 39, sponsored by Senator Craigo. Long-term homeowners tax exemption, sunset repeal, and act relating to taxation.
Senate File 39 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next Senate file for our consideration, Senate File 54.
Senate File 54, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss. State banks and SPDI conversions, an act relating to banks, banking, and finance.
Senate File 54, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next Senate file for our consideration, Senate File 55.
Senate File 55, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss. Special Purpose Depository Institution Amendments, an act relating to banks, banking, and finance.
Senate File 55, having been read two separate times, the question is now, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next Senate file for our consideration, Senate File 85.
Senate File 85, sponsored by Senator Nethercott. Raven Act, an act relating to the Division of Criminal Investigation.
Senate File 85, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next Senate file for our consideration, Senate File 99.
Senate File 99, sponsored by Senator Cooper. Prescriptive easements for electricity delivery, an act relating to property, conveyances, and security transactions.
Senate File 99, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next Senate file for our consideration, Senate File 101.
Senate File 101, sponsored by Senator Beitman. Second Amendment Protection Act Amendments 3, an act relating to the protection of constitutional rights.
Senate File 101, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next Senate file for our consideration, Senate File 110. Or no, excuse me, 106.
Senate File 106, sponsored by Senator Beitman. Welfare Fraud Prevention Act Amendments, an act relating to welfare.
Senate File 106, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next Senate file for our consideration, Senate File 110.
Senate File 110, sponsored by Senator Hicks. Residential Property Tax Revisions, an act relating to taxation and revenue.
We have amendments. First amendment for our consideration on Senate File 110, Representative Riggins. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to move Senate File 110, second reading amendment number 1, corrected. This amendment is introduced for the purpose of acting on Amendment A that voters approved in November of 24. This amendment addresses, excuse me, this amendment addresses the first item in the introduction of this bill, page 1, line 2 and 3, where it says specifying property tax assessment rates for residential real property. The passing of Amendment A promised much, but the reality is simply created a fourth class of property with no action attached. There's an amendment coming up that has just the opposite effect of what I think the voters intended, of actually raising the limit property tax rate. This amendment establishes a residential property tax assessment rate of 8.5% for this fourth class of property in anticipation of the citizens' initiative that, if approved, may already be in effect by the time this current bill is enacted in 2028. So with that in mind, I'll go through the amendment. I could go line by line, but I could probably clarify it much simply by just looking at the sections that I'm going to remove. So let's just go to, I want to check your attention to page 2, line 14. I have struck from there at the end of line C, residential real property, strike as follows, and simply insert 8.5%. Line 16 through 20, delete entirely. Go to page 3, lines 4 through 7, delete entirely. Now there's some renumbering of paragraphs here from that correspond with that. So let's go over here to line 4 or page 4. You'll see on line 5, it says residential real property, 8.5%. And then strike entirely line 7 through line 12. And then if you'll go down to line 16, this is where the 25 mil levy discussion is taking place. I strike that out, lines 16 through 21. Now you go to page 5, and this is continuation of that discussion about the mill levy. And I delete that entirely, line 1 through line 8. So then we go to section 3, that's line 12 through 23. And I debated this a little bit. It has a $500,000 appropriation to probably implement the activity that was going to be associated with the mill levies, maybe adjusting camera systems. Now I struck that out, just thinking if this was adopted, that wouldn't be needed. So I'll leave that up to you. I thought it could be indivisible if somebody wanted to, but I'll let that go. If we go to page 6, and this is the final part, this act becomes, is enacted upon the passage of the Citizens Initiative, at what time the Secretary of State informs the Department of Revenue that it has been passed and is now law. And that is the whole basis of this, is it relies upon that citizen initiative being passed before any of these take effect. And so I believe this addresses Amendment A, lowers that property tax rate just a little bit by 1% from 9.5 to 8.5. It applies to all residential property. And then it addresses what happens if the initiative, Citizens Initiative passes, and which is, if I recall, it's going to be the 50% across residential property, et cetera. It'll address that at this time. So I stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Riggins. Any questions or any debate, any discussion? Representative Locke, first time on the amendment.
Thank you. And I just want to ask the bringer of the amendment a few questions. I was trying to make absolutely sure we understand what's happening here. So you've removed the owner occupied component, and you've made it you've changed it from 9.5 to 8.5 for all residential property. And then, of course, if enacted, then you would completely remove any activity related to the 25 mills, all that would go away. And then, and then the other piece is, what is the I assume you left in, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to go through the amendment quickly here. I assume you left in the sunset of the 25%. I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly. So it would be, everything goes to 8.5 for all residential if the People's Initiative is implemented, and then you removed all of the removal or the adjustment of the mills. That's all gone. And the 25% exemption would stay. So it would sunset. Just sorry for the confusion. I'm just trying to make absolutely sure I understand this at the highest level. And really all that would remain in place is the People's Initiative would be implemented, and the percent on all residential would go from 9.5 to 8.5. I'm trying to make sure I understand that correctly. Thank you.
We'll have to hang on, Representative, until we can get back to some other folks. Okay, Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, and I hate to do this, but I think the Chairman of Revenue just pointed this out, and I could do this two ways, but I think the best way is just to divide this amendment. And Mr. Speaker and members, it would be on the amendment lines 14 through 28. We'll just call that Division 1. All the rest of it can be Division 2. And Mr. Speaker, that Division 1 is really that point that the chairman just pointed out. It takes away the residential requirement, and it keeps it at the 8.5, 8.3 issue. So the bill came across, Mr. Speaker, that it was just for residents. This would apply to residents only, this lower assessment rate. And I want to, that's why I want to divide that. I think that's a significant question and we ought to talk about it separately.
Representative Harshman, I'm going to have to go down and on you saying line 14 through line 28, are you sure you don't want to go down to line 31?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for that correction. So that is down through 30. Thank you.
Line through 30? Okay, that's fine too. Okay, I will say that is divisible. So which division do you want to address first?
Mr. Speaker, Division 1, I'm going to support Division 2. Division 1, and I think the bill came across, this is for Wyoming full-time residents, 8-month residents, and then it would also lower it to the lowest possible. Instead of 8.5, it'd be 8.3. It's a little bit, but that's of course, we're tied with that 4 percentage points, 40% of industrial average. So that's the lowest we can go is 8.3 with that. And that's what the bill currently had. But I think this resident, non-resident thing is a big issue. And 35 states charge different rates for non-resident second homeowners. 35 states. We're one of the ones that don't. And if any state should be, it should be us. And so I think this is an important provision in this bill. And that's why I thought we should talk about it separately. And when the good chairman brought it up as well, I just think, so on and against Division 1, I
Okay.
think this should be for Wyoming homeowners only. On and against Division 1. Thank you.
Okay, so we're speaking about lines 14 on page 1 of the bill, lines 14 through 30. Anyone like to discuss? Representative Locke, please, your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think in general, I'm against the entire amendment. And so I'm going to ask for, it gets tricky with this this division. In general, I'm not, again, I'm not for the amendment, but in this case, I'm going to vote. I don't know how that works out, I guess.
If you're against it, you'd want to vote against this section. He's trying
I'm probably
to
going to
get
vote against all of the divisions is probably the only way to do this. So it's gotten a little messy, but I ask for your no vote on all of the amendment. Thank you.
Division 1, we're working on Division 1. Representative Yan, first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. On Division 1, not particularly fond of it, but I think so I'll vote no, but if we get this whole amendment passed, I'll probably say that the bill is more amenable to me voting for the bill. So would argue no on Division 1. You know, we don't need to help out the second homeowners. I think that's not necessary by giving them the tax break. But I think as a whole, very supportive of seeing the representative bring forth something like this together.
Representative Heiner, please, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm trying to get my arms around these changes in this amendment, Division 1 and Division 2. If anybody has any numbers, usually we can go to a fiscal note and be able to understand a little bit more. I'm kind of in the blind here, so if anybody can help me out with some numbers, I'd sure appreciate it.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Representative Brown, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So my question on this, it kind of dovetails with some news that came out as we were coming into session this year from the agency, or we'll call it quasi-judicial branch of the executive branch, that potentially was going to bring out a piece of challenge to our current issues with the property tax assessment. And it comes down to Article 15 and Section 11 within the Constitution. And it's in Section D that all taxation shall be equal and uniform within each class of property. And so, and I think we did change that. But the problem that I have with that is that's actually where we have concern about this. Do we have an equal protection clause within the 14th Amendment of treating different people differently? Other states may be able to do this, and I get that. But as we look at other states doing this, are their constitutions different than ours? Really, we're subsidiary to the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. And I think we run a very serious risk if we start separating out equal protection issues with this type of stuff of resident owners and non-resident owners. So if I can get some information on that, a little bit more guidance on that from what maybe this committee has heard, it would be really helpful to me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Brown. Representative Bear, for your first time, sir, on Division 1, Amendment number 1 to second reading amendment to 110. Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and opposed to the division, just to answer the comments from the previous speaker, I had that group ahead in front of the Appropriations Committee this year and discussed this very issue prior to the news coming out that they were potentially going to sue the state over these disparities. And it was very specific in the news reports that it had to do with the cap that we passed 2 years ago, not the 25% reduction last year, but the cap that was creating the disparity that is at issue within our Constitution. And this has been a comment amongst us and our colleagues for some time, that when we do exemptions over time, you're going to have disparities from one house to the next door neighbor because things change in those lives of those people that own those homes, and things get sold, and the exemption no longer applies the same to one house as the house right next door. And so the cap is the one that is creating the most disparity, and over time that will become worse. And we've used the word Band-Aid often in this body because that's what these exemptions do. They provide relief. We put them into law, which is long-term, but they are Band-Aids. And I think that the bill itself that this amendment applies to is actually looking for reform that is going to be a long-term solution that avoids all of these issues. But I want the body to be real clear that that entity that tries to resolve issues on taxation, on property, they were looking at specifically the cap as an issue. They did say in my committee that the 25% is not an issue right now. It can become an issue over time, but right now that's not the issue. This bill purports to replace, not now, but within the next 2 years, replace what we did with the 25% property tax reduction and do it in a very constitutional manner. And so right now I am for this bill. I'm not sure, that I want to make changes that affect the 69th like this does, but right now it's probably the right thing to do to start getting the ball rolling on real reform that keeps us constitutional. And this bill replaces both the cap and the 25% reduction, makes them constitutional. Unfortunately, if you pass any part of this division or this amendment in its entirety, you actually create a tax increase on property owners. The one part I do like about this amendment is that we could probably help out some of those renters out there if we expanded the number of homes that we apply it to, and that's what this amendment does. But unfortunately, it creates other problems that are going to lead to property tax increases to most of your constituents. So on and against the division and for the bill.
Thank you, Representative. Any other members for their first time on the amendment, Division 1? Representative Storer, your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to disagree a little bit with the last speaker that this bill doesn't address the 4% cap at all. It only makes all residential property have a reduction of 1% in its assessment rate. So that's about a 10.5% reduction across all residential property tax. So just think 10% cut in revenues, whether it's second homes or owner occupied. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Representative Lean, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just some numbers so that you have them from our good department that oversees our revenues. There was 49,360 homeowners that took part in the 25% property tax reduction by March 1st. The long-term homeowners is still open. What does this mean when we're talking about residential, all residential properties? We're also looking at our renters that are paying an increase in commercial insurance cost while they're renting. So yeah, that's one thing to take into consideration while you're considering all residential properties versus just owner occupied residential properties. I myself will be a no on this, but just some information that you can have to make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other members for the first time on the amendment? Division 1. Still speaking on Division 1. He's not, you can speak, Representative Riggins, if you'd like. I mean, you don't have to hold out of this conversation. We're on the division. So Representative Riggins, would you like to speak on this?
Yeah, I would like to answer a couple questions if I could.
Well, you certainly may. You can
as
do it
to,
the first time and second time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The good chairman over there, when he talked about the repealer, that was in the language. That's exactly correct. You mentioned about a couple of other subjects you had confirming what you assumed. It was correct also. And I knew that some of our statisticians in here would handle a little bit of the dollar amounts that my co-representative in my hometown addressed. And the intent was to make this bill constitutional, try to avoid finding itself in a situation where the courts are making these determinations for us. So I'd like to keep the bill as written. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Riggins. Any others for their first time on the division? Seeing no one else on the division, second time, Representative Locke, for your second time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and body. I would ask for a no vote on this. I think that the representative from where there's lots of coal explained it very well what the intent of the bill is to get us closer to, away from some of these disparate exemptions that we have. This puts us, I think, on a better track overall moving forward. This amendment, although I love the fact it moves to all residential, the truth is it completely changes the intent of the bill. So I ask for a no vote on this division, and I'll ask for a no vote on the whole amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Representative Yin, for your second time.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. There are issues that we currently have with our current tax code. And so when our good chairman of appropriations talked about that, that's true. But the bill as written puts us towards a fiscal cliff. It puts us towards a fiscal cliff almost immediately. And so I appreciate the good representative from Natrona County bringing this amendment as a whole, because I think it helps solve a large part of the problem that we had with the bill as it came from the other side. So again, I'm probably going to vote no on this division, but I will accept the bill as is if we accept both divisions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other members for their second time? I have Heiner, Landon Brown, Bears, Store, Lean. Seeing no one? Okay, back to the bringer. Representative Harshman on Division 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I think there are just two questions that were not answered. I want to address the one by the majority floor leader on the fiscal note. That's part of the problem with this bill. There is no fiscal note. And I handed out, and I hope you still have it, and I'll run another copy and get it out to you. The impacts of this bill are incredible. And we're going to leave here with an, $800 million in the LSRA. This will be another $120 million or so on the LSRA. But regardless of that, this amendment is constitutional because the voters of Wyoming changed the Constitution to allow two separate classes of residential property. So it is 100% constitutional. 35 states already do that. In fact, every state around us actually raises the rate on out of state, not substantially, and not like we've done on all of our industries where out of staters actually pay most of our bills. And so no on this amendment, and then we'll talk about Division 2. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, body, you're voting on Division 1 of Senate File number 110, second reading amendment number 1. This is lines 14 through 30. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Did you Okay, anyway. All those opposed? The amendment has not been adopted. You want a standing division, Representative Sherwood? Are you good or? Okay, all right. It's passed. All right, that has not been adopted. We'll take a quick break here. Representative Hornstrom, please, you have something for us? I think you have a lot of young people down here.
Privilege, Mr. Speaker.
You certainly may.
Thank you. As long as we're talking about divisions, I'm going to call them Division 1. Division 1 of Burns Elementary fourth graders are here in the gallery with their teacher, Miss Waddle. So give them a big round.
Welcome to the house, Burns, Wyoming. Glad to have you with us here. Appreciate you guys and gals taking time and your teachers to come visit with us today and see us. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Division 2 now. Representative Harshman. Representative Harshman.
Mr.
Division 2.
Speaker, on Division 2, I'd urge an aye vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any discussion on Division 2? Representative Locke, please. Division 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to vote, request an aye vote on this. This completely guts the bill. The concept is to move into a little bit of a different direction, give this body additional tools by giving us the ability to basically use the tax mills if we feel that that's the right thing to do to provide, excuse me, to provide tax exemptions to our folks or tax relief to our people. It was interesting about 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It was funny. I brought up an issue and I said, I would really like this body to think about not always thinking about how do we spend the people's money, but look at opportunities when we are doing really well. Where's the opportunity to put money back into the people's pockets? And somebody made a comment and said, well, that's really hard to do from here. Well, guess what this original bill actually does? It actually gives us that capability when it's appropriate and when we've made a lot of money. And when we have all these people's money invested, I want everybody to think about this. We invest everybody's money. We're making a lot of money. We're investing this money for them too. We're investing money for the individuals and the businesses, not just to continue to, part of it is funding government, of course, absolutely, that's our job, and making sure the government's properly focused. But this gives us a mechanism with us being able to, through the assessment, adjust the number of state mills that we decide, hey, we want to pay some of that back. That's what this bill does. And it was explained probably better by the representative or the chairman from up in where the coal is. But at the end of the day, this bill gives us great tools. So I'm going to ask for a hard no on this amendment, and let's stay on the bill, and let's make other adjustments to the bills if it makes sense. But let's not gut this bill. I think this is a good opportunity for us to move forward on a really good option for the legislature.
Thank you, Representative. Any members for their first time on Division 2? Division 2. Representative Riggins, you want to speak on this? Okay. Any others? Representative Yen, Division 2.
Mr. Speaker, without this division, without adopting this division, we will head to a fiscal cliff. It is hundreds of millions of dollars, where half of that again goes to Teton County, into their pockets. Which, you know, I think some of you are saying, yeah, okay, let's give everyone a 50% tax cut. We gave tax relief. What we need is to make sure that we can properly sustain government, because if we don't, we're going to have to raise taxes some other way. Every tax policy decision we make will be a burden shift. If not now, it will be in the future. So what you are doing, if you adopt the bill without the amendment, is you are telling the 69th, here, we're giving you a big, huge $100 million problem. You're going to have to figure out how to fix it next year.
Representative Filer, for your first time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On for Division 2, and we keep talking that this is a cut. You know, we're going to leave more money out there, but this is a backfill too. So what happens is we have to backfill these losses. And so all it is just switching who's paying without anything to recoup. So if we if we don't vote for this amendment, are we really creating a tax cut? I think we really need to ask this question, because all we're doing is switching the burden. And we're going to take it out of our coffers here at the state level just to put right back in. So instead of losing it over here, we're just going to lose it over here. And in turn, it's just going to keep us draining and draining and draining more up here, to where later on, when our towns and counties are going to need some help, we're not going to be able to help them. So I think we really got to think about this as a whole picture here. So on and for this division.
Representative Bear, for your first time on Division 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and oppose the division and for the bill. Just want to remind the body that just last year, we had these property tax bills, and it was this body and not our colleagues down the hall that tried to help those local governments with a backfill, and that was rejected. What this bill does, it actually does help those local governments. Those subdivisions all get helped with the way this bill is written. They get about half of that money. We've tried to do 75% for 2 years, and that didn't pass. This gives 50% for the lifetime of the bill and their future. On the side of the schools, it doesn't matter what we do on the schools, folks. They're going to get paid because we have a backstop within the LSRA that if they don't have the funds, every year, July 1st, we put in enough money to bring them up to $100 million, no matter where their general fund is at. So this is a way to go ahead and do that accounting and make sure that the money's there every month by giving the money directly to the school districts through this department that handles education, and doing so from our general fund. So this is just the same money. It's going to either come out of the LISRA or it's going to come out of the general fund. So when we talk about what we're going to do to the 69th, this is really no different than what we're already doing on the school side with the 25% property tax reduction. Same thing, just a different way of doing the accounting. But when it comes to the 69th, I made those same comments that you just heard from the minority floor leader, and I agree with him. We're putting pressure on the 69th, but we're doing it via spending, not via this property tax relief for your constituents. So it is absolutely true that if you don't have this portion in there on this division, then the taxes that your constituents pay in property taxes will increase the moment that this bill goes into effect. On and against the division for the bill.
Representative Storr, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why are we even talking about more property tax cuts? Can we please help me understand? Those of you who joined me on Revenue Committee, how many citizens showed up over the last couple of weeks to tell us we needed to cut more property tax? I don't think a single one. So while I appreciate the concept of taking the burden off of our local governments and putting it on the state, without this amendment, we're giving huge tax cuts to multi-million-dollar properties that will just exacerbate the problems we already have. That will cut funding for schools in everyone's community, not just mine. So I really just have to ask, why are we even considering this bill? Thank you.
Representative Brown, for your first time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, this piece of paper is actually where I think we really need to call our attention to. And I disagree with the last speaker saying that it's going to be a cut to education. It's not. Okay? But what it is going to do is be a self-inflicted gunshot wound to our own foot, right in the middle of a marathon. Okay? And let me explain why. If you have your goldenrod, take a look at it, and I want to walk you through something here. So if you look on the first page, and you go down to line 29, that is the Legislative Stabilization Reserve account. For anybody watching on TV, anybody that doesn't understand what that is, that's a rainy day account. That's the account that we've been talking about for years. That thing is ebbed and flowed between 1.2 and 1.8 billion dollars. If you look here, as we came into session, we had 1.6 billion dollars sitting in there on the 25-26 JCC status, so column O. Now, if you go all the way over on that same line to column AA, that is as our budget has passed, it has been signed by both this body and the other body and is sitting downstairs. And you look at that account balance, and that account balance now says 832,600,000 and change. Ladies and gentlemen, we've pulled $800 million out of our legislative stabilization account to cover the elimination of the BRA and the elimination of the SIPA accounts. Okay? Here's why I'm bringing this to your attention. The chairman of appropriations just testified that it's going to be okay and it's going to be safe because we're going to pay out of the LSRA to cover our funding for our education. Well, I was here when we did that bill, and that was in 2017. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a cap on that. That cap stops at $500 million. At $500 million, we no longer guarantee our education spending policy from the LISRA, which means we don't have the money to pay our bills for education. This amendment at least attempts to rectify that by saying we're going to continue to pay for our education through those mills. That's all we're trying to do here. We have pilfered our savings accounts to make ourselves feel better in the short term, but in the long term, this is going to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound on our foot when we're trying to run a marathon. It's going to hurt a heck of a lot worse the next step we take. If we pass this bill and we say this is what we want to do, we are only guaranteed at $500 million. That is 1 year. 1 year that we're going to pull out of this. And we're already going to have to start talking about revenue increases with the legislation that's currently sitting in statute. Those are just the facts, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. That's nothing more than just factual information in the way that we are currently set up with our statutory structure.
Representative, trying to remember which one of you guys got there. Representative Singh, I do believe, was there first. Representative Singh, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why do we talk about residential property taxes, revisions of those taxes? Well, my opinion, my humble opinion, call it youthful ignorance, I think that being taxed on an unrealized gain on your property is unethical. And if the system is built around an unethical tax, then it's our responsibility to address that. And so that is why we talk about this issue. And yes, there are problems with the funding model, but that does not negate the fact that our citizens are being taxed on an unrealized gain. And I don't think that's right. Thank you.
Representative Davis, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Speaker. What I understand about the LSRA is the unprofiled dollars, and we've heard talk about 750 million, and we hear talk about oil-based and our revenues and everything like that. Well, oil's up $10 a barrel right now. So those funds, the unprofiled funds, what I understand, auto backfill into the LSRA the first of every year, or 1st of July. So those are unprofiled funds. So my question is, this $1.8 billion that was there to begin with, where did those dollars come from? And the answer that I've been able to derive is it's an auto backfill from the dollars that we're not profiling. They automatically dump into our savings account. So I need to, maybe a little clarification if that is correct on how that works. So that's where our funding come from. So if we're sitting at 832 million now, by July 1st, we'll have that auto tip, which if there's the 750 plus or minus in there, we'll have 1.5 billion. That's my question. That's what I'm trying to find out. That was the information I received and wanted to know if that's factual.
Representative Larson Lloyd for your first time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, the funds, the realized capital gains will tip in July. But I'd like to have just a follow-up conversation with the good chairman from Transportation, who notes to us that there's a limit on the LSRA at $500 million. When it hits $500 million, we can't shift it to the common school account. Now, the rest of the story is that doesn't negate or eliminate the responsibility through the court cases to fund education. So where do we get it? Before we spend anything else for the general fund, we have to fund education first. So that burden then comes out of this budget that we've just talked about, comes right off the top. We have to take the funds available. Then we have to figure out how to adjust our general fund. So sometimes this whole conversation on LISRA, which is really intended to be a savings account to buffer ups and downs of our funding over a course of a biennium, is we're now kind of like eating a piece of licorice from both ends. And it'll be gone, but it won't eliminate the requirement we have to fund education, and that'll have to come out of the general fund side. So just bear that in mind as we have these conversations on the property tax issue, please.
Thank you, Representative. Any other members for their first time? Now bear in mind, we're still on Division 2 of the amendment. Representative Alaman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this amendment will raise our property taxes, which is immoral. You know, just 2 weeks ago, I heard we had millions and millions of dollars that we could spend. $100 million here and 50 million there. We're wealthy. We can spend it. Today I'm hearing, oh no, we cannot lower taxes because we're broke. I don't know which it is. I'm confused, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other members for their first time on Division 2? Representative Connolly. Division 2.
Morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning, Representative Connolly.
You know, I haven't been down here too long, and I'm trying to wrap my head around this. I'm in favor of this motion. And what I'm listening really hard to both sides of this conversation. And I really, in my head, just can't get there. I think this is a good amendment. And if it can't pass, then I don't know if I can support the bill. It's just not making any sense to me at all, what I'm hearing. So I'm in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Representative Connolly. Representative Clouston, your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, on and for the Second Amendment. You know, what we're doing here is if
I think most of us are on
Division.
for the Second Amendment, but we are actually on Division 2 of Amendment.
Division 2,
number
thank
1.
you.
But thank you for that, Representative. Please proceed.
I'll probably be for all of them. I don't know.
There's some gun lobbyists out there that are cheering violently right now. But anyway, go ahead.
So I feel like we're just kicking the can down the road. We're going to take away the 25 mils, and that makes everybody look good right now, right? A tax break. And then we're gonna have this fiscal cliff, and then in the future, we're gonna have to start adding some kind of mills back in or taxes back in. You know, we did the 4% property cap, we did the long-term homeowners, we did the 25%, we've got an amendment coming. I think we need to slow down and look at the future. So the 25 mills causes a lot of problems, maybe not this year, right, but in the future. So on and for this division on this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Wiley, for your first time, sir.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Yeah, you know, we're sitting here and we're listening to this, and if we do put ourselves in this position to where we're going to have to try to backfill our backfill, is it really, you know, foresight that we're using here? Should we be thinking, you know, okay, we're saying that this is immoral, but folks can understand after all of the relief and stuff that we've given through property taxes, a set figure at the end of the year, what they can plan for. If we're not careful and it goes to some kind of other way to be able to create this funding that we need, is it going to be a percentage of what we earn every year? I don't want to be a part of that body. But are we going to paint ourselves in a corner to later on, that's what we have? I don't want to give that to the 69th. Or are we just going to call it something else? And we can say, hey, we're doing great things right here, but in this hand, now we have usage taxes or something. Because I tell you what, your house, that's great. It's your property. I don't want to take anybody's house from them. But you use the roads to get there. You use the utilities to hit the little flusher. I was doing that quite a bit last night. And you have to turn on the faucet. And then on top of that, you send your kid to school. Sometimes those kids only get that opportunity to go to that school. And constitutionally, that's our charge. So we really need to think about what we're doing here, so we're not just digging a deeper hole for future generations. On and for.
Thank you, Representative. Any other representatives, members for their first time on Division 2? Representative Riggins.
Trying to remember if I spoke the first time, for a second, please.
Okay, no, you have not, but you have now. Any others? We're just getting, yeah, I guess there's nobody. So heading to second then. Second time on the amendment. Division 2. Who wants to go first? We've got people getting up. Now people are going down. Representative Locke, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank some of the previous speakers that brought up the budget and the fact that there's a lot of money that's been spent, and a large part of this body voted to spend that money. And a significant part of this body voted to not spend that money. So thank you for bringing that up. That's probably been an important topic here. So most definitely, this means we need to manage our budget. And there's two different worldviews here. One is we need to spend that money, and the other is we'd rather try to cut spending and manage our spending at the state level. That's absolutely a component of this. There's literally no question. But I'm on and against the amendment because I think the original bill starts getting us into putting us in a better direction from this perspective, gives us better tools to do the right thing for the people. One thing that was brought up, somebody said, well, this is a whole new increase in tax. Nope, this is a swap in tax. There's no lying being done here in terms of where that goes. Absolutely, we're moving some back on the state budget. But I want everybody in here to remember, we voted for $100 million increase here, $100 million increase there, $10 million increase there a few weeks ago. Do we have to manage these budgets? Absolutely. On and against this amendment, because I think it's important to think about that. We spent money on a lot of things, but we always say schools are important. In this case, this is increasing the spending on the state for schools. We're putting that, instead of putting that on our people, we're putting that on us. Okay? And that's the difference. I think it's important for us to have an avenue to say, you know what, the state's doing fantastic. We want to make sure we take care of the folks. And this is a tool this is a mechanism we can put in place that gives us the ability to do that. And again, think about all of the hundreds of millions of dollars we asked to add. There's a group of us that said we'd rather not. We'd rather spend a little bit less. We'd rather control the budget. But again, on and against the amendment and for the bill.
Representative Yen, for your second time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So I pulled up the Code of the West, our state code, and the 10th part of that is know where to draw the line. What this bill does is it swaps out the 25% tax exemption and replaces it with a more than 50% tax reduction. And so I guess the question that you need to say is where do we draw the line? If you think that property tax is immoral, why don't you just take all of it out? Why aren't we just eliminating property tax? Bring that bill, and then we can discuss that. But I don't know why we would cut it 50% and then have the People's Initiative cut it another 50%. Where do we draw the line, and how do we fund our government? Because this doesn't bring any solutions on how we fund our government. How are we going to fund our schools? By just ripping up our roads and saying we're not going to pay for roads, we're going to take the fuel tax and we're going to start jacking from there, and we're going to pay for our schools that way. Because we have to pay for our schools. We don't have to pay for our roads. You haven't told me where we're going to cut. Are we going to cut our land grant university again? What are we going to cut to pay for our schools with this more than 50% tax cut on top of a People's Initiative that will come on the ballot next year? Where do we draw the line, Mr. Speaker?
Any other members for the second time on the amendment? I've got pretty substantial list here, ladies and gentlemen, so Representative Filer, and you are definitely on it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And oh man, this is fun. But I kind of think I'm going to kind of dumb it down to my kids' level if I was going to talk to my kids. In our household, we pay our bills, pay our mortgage, pay our light bill, pay our water bill, pay our trash bill, pay our taxes. But in order to do that, we have to have revenue in our homes to do that, right? So we bring in revenue in our homes, and then we have enough there to pay our bills and make sure we're investing correctly, improving our property, making sure our kids' college funds are funded. And then we also have a savings account. What we're doing right now by not passing this amendment is saying, forget about the revenue, quit your job, live off your savings, and hope it stays. We're going to have to find more revenue. There's not a person in this body that wants to go back out and tell one of their constituents that we're going to have to either have a new tax, whether it be sales tax, an increase on sales tax, or an income tax, in order to get those revenues back in because we decided to quit our job here. No, I guarantee what this body will end up doing is asking that industry that has paid for our state for years and decades. We're going to ask that mineral industry to throw out another dollar. That's what we're going to do. This is where these revenues, a lot of them come from, is the mineral industries that we do have in our budget. And then I did hear also just words around the room is, well, we tried to stop this spending all the way throughout this process, this budget session. We tried to stop the spending. Well, folks, we're spending if we don't pass this amendment. Because we're going to have to spend our savings completely down to fund education. You know, all those kids that we clap for every morning, they're up in the balcony for their school. We're going to spend our savings account down. And it's going to be gone. Or it's going to hit that threshold to where we can't use it no more. I mean, is Wyoming's idea just to get rid of education? Because if it is, just like the previous speaker said, if it's just bring a bill, let's just get rid of it. Let's take it to the people. We don't need education no more. I don't understand why we got to go back and forth on something that is so logical. Also, one thing we also do, Mr. Speaker, is we get mad when our towns and counties ask us for help. When they say, hey, we need help with infrastructure, our roads, we don't have enough money. And then we tell them, well, you got to make sure you assess your mill levies. Make sure you go to your community, make sure that they're okay with you, taxing them. They vote on certain projects, whatever it is. Make sure you go to them first before you hit us up. We should be dead last. We should allow people to take care of themselves in their own communities. At least that's what I teach my children. I teach my children to work, pay their bills, take care of themselves, and maybe sometimes dad's got to throw them a bone. There's no doubt. We all done it with our kids. And I don't mind throwing them that bone when they're out there working and they're being honest. Let's be honest. What's the true path? Where does this body or that group that says, hey, we want to cut all the spending, but we're going to go spend anyway to drain down our savings accounts. Where's the honesty? Go be honest with your constituents. On and for.
Any other member for their second time on the amendment? Division 2. Seeing no one rush. Oh, we got members fighting over a microphone. There you go. Representative Riggins, please, your second time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the whole point of this is to address what might happen here next year when if the citizen initiative goes forward. And I purposely tried to keep it simple. That's why I leveled out. I did have those constitutional ideas in mind. Having one percentage rate for that property class. And this 25 mil business is another complicating factor into this. So I'm going to vote aye on the amendment, and I'd encourage you to do so, because complication is probably one of the reasons that we can't even get people to apply for some of the relief packages we have now. So at least this simplifies it, makes it understandable to everybody who takes a peek at the final legislation. Thank you, and I'm for the amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Wiley, for your second time, sir.
Mr. Speaker, thank you again. You know, we're talking about what might happen. Well, folks, I tell you what, this body went to work last year, and I'm hearing about it every day. We're losing centers. We're losing programs for the young and the old. Over and over again, we said, you know, Sweetwater is going to be the most impacted. We didn't raise like everybody else did. What are we doing? It's not equitable. Well, here it is. It's not about what's going to happen in the future. My communities are already losing their minds because we're losing our quality of life now. And we're living off of our reserves, which is great because my communities, you know, took the efforts to create reserves. But now we're talking about to burn the state reserves as well. So all you're doing is getting that shovel out, and we're digging. And we're going to make it rough, really, really rough on the folks that come to this chamber after us. Maybe not next year or the year after, but definitely down the road. And all we're doing is creating a crisis for no reason.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Bear, for your second time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Boy, we spent a lot of time, I think over 40 hours debating the budget, and I am glad of the confirmation that I was heard. Hearing a lot from people today that they understand that we are putting pressure on future legislators. Mine, of course, was from a spending standpoint. What we're hearing today is from those who really want to continue spending and increase taxes on our constituents. And I just disagree. So on and opposed to the amendment, for the bill.
Any other members for the second time? Seeing none, we're back to the divider of the amendment. Representative Harshman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks, members, for all the good debate. So really, to take the math of this, we've got three nice property tax relief programs: the 4% cap, the 25% off your tax bill, and the 50% for long-term Wyomingites. So the good share of revenue talks about putting money back in people's pockets. That is $200 million that we have done in the last 4 years. $200 million a year. That is incredible. Now, 50% of those three programs, $100 million of that is the 25%. And that's the best I mean, it's awesome. And it's got the $1 million cap. 100 million. So we're going to, with this bill, get rid of that program and then cut school mills and lower the assessment rate. Does that treat everybody equally? See, 25% treats everybody, that's a percentage. No. Cutting all these school mills and lowering the rate benefits the super rich. I was going to bring an amendment, I still could, to change the little catch title from this little bill that doesn't have a fiscal note. It's not a committee bill. It says residential property tax revisions. I was going to change it to Teton County feed bill. Decided not to, Mr. Speaker. That'd be amendment number 5. So we put $200 million back into our people's pockets, and now we're going to pull that back and redistribute it to the richest county in the world. I don't know why. I don't know why. And so it doesn't make any sense. And so talked about spending in here. 240 amendments brought by this House. And I understand the media release, it's been doubled and doubled and tripled again. And so, oh, it's billions. No, it wasn't. And I'll just say in the 24 years I've served on this floor, and I love this House, I have never seen one body capitulate and roll over to the other side in a budget negotiation in 15 minutes. So we walked the plank and voted no on a
Point of
bunch of
order.
stuff.
Point of
And
order,
then we got,
Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, Representative, I'd like, yes, please.
I think there's dispersions being cast on the JCC, which has nothing to do with this amendment.
Agreed. Representative, please keep it on the amendment.
thank you, Mr.
Division
Speaker.
two.
But I think dispersions were cast on people that brought amendments and voted aye.
Point of order, Mr.
So that's
Representative Williams, please, what is your point?
Mr. Speaker, the previous representative just called point of order and you agreed
Mhm.
with them. And the good representative from the Windy City is continuing on
Point well
without
taken.
respecting your decision, Mr. Speaker.
Point well taken. Thank you, Representative. Representative, please, let's stay on Division
Yeah.
2, can we?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate that. And so since I didn't bring up spending, I'll finish with that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. But this is, so I think we're at a crossroads, whether we're going to accept this bill without a fiscal note, non-committee bill brought late to the legislature that shifts the tax benefit of the 25% that we passed, which is very popular among our citizens, now to the super rich. You won't have the 25% next year, folks. You're going to have a 10%, 10.6 drop in your assessment rate and your 25 school mills if this goes through. That does not equal 25% for the average homeowner. Hey, it's math. Okay, so Mr. Speaker and members, I think if you vote no on this amendment and somehow pass this bill through, I think you have to vote no on the recalibration bill. You can't increase spending on schools while you're chopping the legs out of the 25 mills statewide property that fund schools. Immoral or not, property taxes are the oldest form of taxation in the history of mankind. We had property taxes when we were a territory. That's how we built this capital. It's how we built our university. And not like every state in the United States of America, we fund our schools with property taxes. And we are blessed because we have the lowest property tax rate in America. Might be one lower than us, but we're knocking 49.50 every time because guess what? Minerals pay over half our property taxes. And then that little FMR diversion pays a whole bunch of our schools as well. Same with the little severance tax. So I think we got to be honest about this bill. This bill takes it away from the average Wyomingite, the people that sent us here, and sends it, most of it, to the Teton County feed bill. Great. I'm glad they're here. That's all good. But I don't think the working men and women of Wyoming who are sending their kids to public schools today will appreciate that. So vote aye on this amendment, and then we'll keep moving on and keep making this little bill better. And it's a lot of work to make this bill better, but let's keep working. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, you're voting on Division 2 of Senate File 110, second reading amendment number 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Division being called by the chair, I'm in doubt. All those in favor, please stand. That's right. Okay, you may be seated. All those opposed, please stand. Okay, you may be seated. The amendment has not been adopted. 25 to 35. Okay, next amendment for our consideration. Senate File 110. Amendment number 2, Representative Harshman, please,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Speaker. I'd move second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill or Senate File 110. Members, this just puts $1 million cap. Our current policy of the 25% reduction, it puts these benefits of reduced assessment and reduced school meals and caps it at $1 million, which is the full benefit, even though it's less benefit of the 25%, the full benefit to 99% of our homes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any discussion? Representative? Got someone coming on the run. Representative Storr, please, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for this amendment, as you know, we did a little math yesterday, and this still increases, even with this amendment. It takes a $10 million home that, without this amendment, is going to get a $26,000 tax break. $26,000. This amendment, even with this amendment, that $10 million home is still going to get an increase from like $1,600 to almost $3,000. But $3,000 makes more sense than $26,000. So this at least brings this bill into something that we could at least try to figure out how it won't hurt our revenues by helping multimillionaires in the state. So I hope you'll consider that. So on and for the amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Any other members for their first time? Amendment number 2, Representative Vlock, please, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm clearly tricky with the button. I'm going to no on this amendment, but quite honestly, this is something that's been discussed in this House many times. You know, everybody's got to make their own peace with where they want to be on this thing. You know, do the rich people not deserve this the same benefit? It could be argued. I understand the issue with county that is the most expensive county in the country. I get that. From my perspective, got people in my district who probably have houses this expensive. I'm the guy who's got the cheapest house in the whole district. So at the end of the day, just from my perspective, I'm a no. But I'd say people vote your conscience on this. I'm not one to argue either way on this. And I know we've done these types of caps before. But again, I would argue, do those people not deserve that benefit as well? Something to consider. Thank you.
Any other member? Representative Bear, if you're.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This feature was in our 25% property tax relief. And this body debated it and put it in there, I think, for good reason. So there is good reason for this amendment. The problem I have with the amendment is that we're creating reform in this bill, not relief. So this is not the Band-Aid. This is the long-term, fix it, make it constitutional bill. And what this amendment does, it locks in that cap. And if you currently own a $750,000 home, pretty soon it's going to be $1 million home. And the cap will be in place in law, and you're not going to get the same relief you were as a percentage as your home increases in value. So because this $1 million doesn't have any flexibility in it, and I'm not sure how to fix that, that's probably the reason you should think twice about voting for the amendment. I'm still thinking it over. I want to hear the bringer's thoughts.
Any other representative for the first time on the amendment? Amendment number 2, Senate File 110. Seeing no one. Second time, Representative Storr? You certainly may.
Thank you,
Please.
Mr. Chairman. Again, just to make the point, this is actually going from 25% off of $1 million to essentially 50% off of $1 million. So it is a further tax break. And without this amendment, it is hundreds of millions of dollars of tax break that we will be losing revenues for. I'd like to, I just want to understand, like, why are we even talking about property taxes still, right? Why haven't we done enough? So, and why do we want to give wealthy people bigger tax breaks when they certainly demand a lot of services as well and have a lot of incentives for having a home here that actually saves them money? So this really is a mortgaging of our future for our kids' education, as well as the revenues for the state. So this is at least one way that we limit the damage that this bill otherwise would create. So on and for this amendment, and I'll ask for the ayes and noes, please.
We'll need 2 seconds for that. You're referring to Rule 12-4?
Yes.
Thank you, Representative. 2 would be 2. Chief Clerk, have you got 2 names? All right. This will be a roll call vote on this amendment. So 2 seconds. We got to go on. Yep, he's got to speak yet. Any other members for their second time on the amendment? I have Locke and Bear before we vote and get to the bringer. Locke, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go back to the fact that most of you have, $1 million homeowners probably in your district here and there, handful of them. Keep them in mind. One of the things I would throw out, again, I'm against the bill, but I think the people who have the heavier burden of these people probably are pushing the direction they feel is right. But at the end of the day, one of the things I'd like to say is, in many of the bills, one of the directions we have gone with this to try to cap this a little bit, we've typically been, in some recent bills, we've put a $3 million cap. It's a thought for this body to consider that, got a third reading, something to consider if we really want to cap it. A great point was made just a little bit ago that says, hey, people who had a $500,000 home 4 years ago, some of those people are starting to push the million. I've seen people who bought their house at $650,000 already, their house is currently over $1 million. So keep in mind, $1 million cap. I understand it'll save money for the state. Is that the right answer? I tend to be a little bit the other direction. Let's learn how to manage our budgets better. But at the end of the day, that's something I at least wanted to throw out. We've been moving more toward the $3 million, a more appropriate cap. Something to consider for this body, but again, vote your conscience. Thank you.
Representative Barry, you're the only one left. Do you want a second? Waving us off? Okay, back to the bringer. Representative Harshman, please, on your amendment number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to address that issue of this $1 million cap, you remember in the 2 pennies for a million bill, we set that to an inflation adjuster so it would go up every year. We could certainly do that on third reading. I think we should probably do that with our current program of as this bill hopefully fails. But But again, just, if we don't pass this, we're already transferring the tax break, the 200 million that I talked about. It's going to stay about 200 million if we substitute this for the 25%. We're not going to give 300 million. So it's about 200 million. But who's going to get this 100 million in tax break? And that's the real question. That's why this bill, I think, is a problem. Because the super millionaire billionaires didn't send me here. They didn't contribute to my campaign. I am here representing the people of Casper. And that's who is gonna get taken in the chin with this bill. And it's all funneling up to the corner of our state. And I'm not gonna vote on that deal. So please vote aye on this. This makes this bill a little bit better. And then, and I hope I'm doing the right thing, making it better. I sat in my seat and thought maybe I should just let this stinker go downstairs like it is. But, please vote aye and we'll keep moving. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. The body is now voting on second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 110. Chief Clerk will please take the roll.
Element, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Brady, Bratton, Brown Gary, Brown Landon, Byron, Campbell Elisa, Campbell Kevin, Chestick, Clouston, Connolly, Davis, Erickson, Filer, Fornstrom, Geringer, Guggenmoss, Harrelson, Harshman, Heiner, Heft, Jarvis, Johnson, Kelly, excused, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Lean, Locke, Lucas, McCann, Nicholas, Ottman, Pendergraft, Posey, Provenza, Riggins, Rodriguez-Williams, Schmid, Sherwood, Singh, Smith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Thayer, Washut, Wasserberger, Webb, Weber, Worf, Williams, Winter, Wiley, Yin. Mr. Speaker, are there any changes? Guggenmoss, aye to no. Johnson, aye to no. Brown, Gary, aye to no. Knapp, aye to no. Heft, aye to no. Brady, aye to no. Further changes? Further changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 38 aye, 23 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have adopted second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 110. Next amendment for our consideration, second reading amendment number 3, Representative Yin.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 110 and ask for your favorable consideration. So members, this does 2 things. So lines 4 through 16 and 1 through 8, sorry, on page 4, line 6. So on the amendment, sorry, line 11 on the amendment and most of line 13 on the amendment takes away the language about the 25 mils. So we put the 25 school mills back in. Line 10 on page 5 or 8 through 10 or whatever is about the repealer. It's line 10 on page 5. So instead of repealing the 25% program, we would make it so the bill doesn't repeal the 25% exemption, but it also doesn't take the 25 mills out of the school mills. And all it does would be the language on the beginning of page 4 and earlier, which is to set that 9.5 and 8.3 rate. So it'd be impossible to argue that this is a tax increase because it would no longer be a tax increase. The bill would only be a tax decrease of about 14% for all the homes under $1 million. And we leave the 25% exemption in place, but we don't defund our schools that we'll have to backfill in the state by doing it. And so I'll ask you for your favorable consideration, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Any members for their first time on the amendment? Speaking on the amendment, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the bringer of the bill. I'm really against removing, I'm on and against the amendment, but I would like to just be clear. It sounds like what we're doing is we're leaving the 25% in place. We're leaving the 8.3 in place, and what we're removing is the 25 mils. And I'm just kind of clearing, getting ahead, not understanding, want to make sure I understood. Sometimes I'm trying to process all these fast enough. Thank you. I kind of understand where they're going, and they're right. It is not a property tax decrease, but at the end of the day, I'm still in favor of moving in this other direction, and I'm on and against the amendment. But again, I would just ask for a no on the amendment and an aye on the bill moving forward, because I still think that us having that flexibility moving forward, giving ourselves the capability to adjust those mills as we need to move that from the current approaches. Let me mention this. There was a discussion that why do we need to keep looking for property tax? These property tax changes, and why do they keep coming? I don't think I've been clear on this, and I've been clear many times in this body, but I have not been clear on this issue. All of the exemptions we did, quite honestly, were property tax relief bills. They really were. To consider them property tax reform would not be accurate. This bill, one of the things it does, it starts us taking us in the direction of true reform and giving us some flexibility and some additional tools in what I would consider true reform. That's my opinion. That's why it's kind of an important bill to keep moving forward. So again, I ask for a no on the amendment and an aye on the bill.
Representative Hirschman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support of this amendment, this is actually the only thing that will actually be a tax decrease for all Wyomingites. And I think to say that the 4% cap and the 25% reduction off of your bill and a 50% for the long-term Wyomingites is not reform, then I don't know what is. I think those are just word salad stuff that we use with people to confuse them. I'll tell you what, when I looked at my assessment, 25% off, I went, wow. That was true reform. And the 4%, when I looked at my tax assessment and saw, yeah, I saved that much on a 4%. Wow. So those are big time reforms. And a lot of states have done those, and we joined along with them. But this amendment, just think about this, folks. If you don't pass this amendment, there is no tax lowering for anybody except the super wealthy, and the rest of us, particularly rural, lower value homes, will see an increase because they're not going to get the 25%. They're going to get 25 mils, right? And then, but they're going to lose the 25% on the county and city mills and all the rest of them. So they're not going to have a 25%. It's going to be in that mid-15s, but then the super rich are going to go from 25% to 30, 40%. So this amendment, I think, is actually the only tax reduction thing I have seen this year. And yeah, so, and it's about, for those under $1 million, it'll be another 10%. Wow. That's some true relief and reform continuing down that road. So, because we pulled every lever, values, increases, and now this would be on the assessment rate, which we've not pulled this lever yet. That's the final one. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment.
Any other members for their first time on the amendment? Any other members? Seeing none? Representative Locke, good. Representative Bear on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to make a comment here about the amendment. I'm on an opposed to the amendment because I do believe that there is a difference between reform and relief. And we had a discussion earlier today about that agency that looks at disparity, and we bring those complaints to, and how they were, at least in the newspaper, threatening to bring a lawsuit against the state. And I think this is where it's important that the body understand that over time, the current relief that we have out there becomes less and less constitutional. And that is just a fact. And that's why we call it relief, because it's a Band-Aid, because over time, it's just not going to work any longer. We put it into law for the long term, but in reality, that law could be struck down. And so over time, it's just not going to work. That's where this bill is important, because it does make it constitutional for the long run. And if the body could just grasp that, I think it would really be helpful, because by going this route that this amendment does, I think we lose that key feature of making it constitutional for the long run. So on and opposed to the amendment.
Any other members for their first time on the amendment? Seeing none, back to the members that spoke second time. Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the debate on the constitutionality of some of our exemption. Of course, the Constitution gives the legislature the express right to provide exemptions to taxation. Okay, so that's, and do lawsuits happen? Certainly. They happen with our schools, they happen with our criminal and civil law, they might happen with our property tax law, and we adapt and adjust. That's part of the whole balance of powers. But to kind of predict that and say we got to move another way, I think is, I don't think that's accurate. And so, but think about what we've done. And I want to point out the biggest relief program we have, it was 5-6 years ago, is the low income property tax relief program. We raised that to 150% of your county average wage. It's been incredible for people. And that is truly relief for people 150% above the county average wage. And a lot of people, it opened up to a lot more people. And that rests on our ability to fund it with appropriations. That's what relief is. When you pass a 4% cap, a 25% reduction, a 50% long term, that's in the green books. We don't have to kick it back out to somebody. That's just off your assessment rate that we all got, right? So don't get confused, this relief reform thing. I think, poof, like that on fire, we've done some serious reform and a huge part on our relief. But I want our reform to really center on the people that need it and that we've promised it to, not to run it a couple of years and yank it out. Say, hey, we're going to shift this up to the corner of the state. I don't know why. I guess it was somebody's idea. It wasn't a committee idea. So this is a good amendment. Will actually lower property taxes for the people that sent you here. That is true reform and relief. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Locke, your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just talking to the issue of relief and reform, it's kind of an important conversation. And it is true that this amendment definitely will give some additional relief. Interestingly enough, for those of you who, many of you who fought and said, hey, we're putting too much pressure on the local entities with the tax release, keep in mind, this approach puts that burden on them, on the local entities. Keep that in mind. That's something you have to consider as part of this process, because the original bill, if we delete this amendment and we do the original bill brings it back to us and says, hey, manage your budget, state. It really does. It brings most of that weight back on us. I just want everybody to be aware of that. Don't get me wrong. I love the fact that this gives our people more relief, but we're trying to be, I'm trying to be conscious and aware of the fact, where do we put that relief and the pressure? Again, you guys know I like the increase in relief for our folks, no question about it. But at the end of the day, that's something to consider on this. I'm on and against the amendment, but in terms of it being true reform, I don't believe what we've done. I think what we've done is relief, and I think the direction we need to go is true reform. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Bear, you still have an opportunity for a second go around. We good? All right. Back to the bringer. Representative Yen, please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. It's interesting to hear that we're afraid of the courts now and we don't trust the constitutionality of the stuff we passed. But I just want to make it clear what this amendment does. All it does is it turns the bill into a straight 14% tax cut for owner-occupied residential. That's what the amendment turns the bill into. So we no longer have to talk about the school mills anymore. We no longer have to talk about the repeal of the 25%. All it does is turn the bill into a straight 14% tax reduction. And so with that, I'll ask for your favorable consideration. And I also will, pursuant to Rule 12-4, call for the ayes and noes. Thank you,
We'll
Mr.
need
Speaker.
2 seconds. Hold your hands up till our good chief clerk can get some names. All right. Members, you are voting on Senate File 110, second reading amendment number 3. Chief Clerk, whenever you're ready, please call the roll.
Allemand, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Brady, Bratton, Brown Gary, Brown Landon, Byron, Campbell Elisa, Campbell Kevin, Chestick, Plouston, Connolly, Davis, Erickson, Filer, Bornstrom, Geringer, Guggenmoss, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Heft, Jarvis, Johnson, Kelly, excused, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Lean, Locke, Lucas, McCann, Nicholas, Ottman, Pendergraft, Posey, Provenza, Riggins, Rodriguez Williams, Schmid, Sherwood, Singh, Smith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Thayer, Washut, Wasserberger, Webb, Weber, Worf, Williams, Winter, Wiley, Yin. Mr. Speaker, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 25 aye, 35 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have chosen not to adopt second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 110. Next amendment for our consideration, Representative Harshman, reading number 4.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully withdraw amendment number 4. Thank you.
Without objection from the body, amendment number 4 has been withdrawn. Senate File 110 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, Senate File 121. Or no, excuse me. Can't be looking at that list. Senate File 113, sorry.
Senate File 113, sponsored by Senator Crago. 2026 election hand count comparison, an act relating to elections.
Senate File 113 having been read 2 separate times, question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next amendment, Senate File for our consideration, Senate File 121.
Senate File 121, sponsored by Senator Doc Stater. Wyoming Pharmacy Act amendments, an act relating to the Wyoming Pharmacy Act.
Okay, we've got amendments. Representative Larson. Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to, I'd like to move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 121. This is the Pharmacy Act that we talked about yesterday and allowing pharmacists to to administer shots. As I read this and looked at the House Standing Committee amendment, the bill originally changed the age that of the individuals who could receive shots from pharmacists from 7 to 3. And a little history on that is when we allowed this to happen initially, there was talk about the age group back a number of years ago, and we settled in at 7, thinking to allow, because this was a new thing for pharmacists to be able to administer shots and immunizations to individuals. And then we made sure that they had the right place, that there was an inconspicuous place at the pharmacy where they could administer those shots and make it private. And with the idea, because the pharmacists always told us they could do it at a younger age. Now, several years later, they've come back and they're making the recommendation, and this is important as I'll get into it, that to reduce that, to change that age from 7 to 3 years of age. So if you're a parent, you've got children, and you would like them to receive an immunization shot, it's your decision to take them to your primary care provider, to a community health facility, or go to a pharmacist and ask them to administer that immunization. Now, I think the relevance of this being recommended by the profession is twofold. If you look at pharmacists of all the medical professions, they're always number 1 or 2 of the top of the most trusted of all the professions. If you look at overall professions, meaning medical industry, engineers, clergy, they're 4th behind elementary school teachers, nurses, in them. So they're 3rd. I trust them. They don't bring this kind of recommendation lightly. So I think I'd like to step back and go to the recommendation of the bill as it came over to the House and delete the second reading amendment and allow them to change that age for the convenience of the families to, if they so choose, to have those immunizations provided by pharmacists. So happy to have any discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Any members for their first time on the amendment? Representative Guggenmoss. First time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and opposed to the amendment. During committee, this was a make or break amendment in the standing committee. And the reason is because with the change in the technology of the vaccinations with the mRNA, it is becoming more and more problematic, and an increasing number of reactions are taking place. And there is, interestingly enough, no record. They don't keep a record of all of the incidences that occur. I found that to be very interesting. We had, in a previous meeting in the committee, discussed, it was actually about stem cells, but a girl came in, teenage girl, came in who could barely walk. And she was not normally like that until she got vaccinations in order to go to a school. And they gave her, I think it was 4 vaccinations at one time. And she could barely walk, serious physical repercussions from those vaccinations. And so I asked the pharmacist representative there, is there any kind of limit that you guys, do you even have protocol on giving them the information, saying maybe we should spread these vaccinations out. And they said no. They'll just try to spread out the location of the injections, but not how many they are given at one time. So my thinking on this amendment was we needed to try to have some sort of a safety measure for these kids from getting an overdose of all these vaccinations at one time. So like I said, this was a make or break amendment during the standing committee. I would have voted against the bill if they were going to keep it at that age limit, just to avoid repercussions from kids getting overdoses of vaccinations. So I am on and opposed to this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative McCann, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ditto everything that the good representative said. And it's not that I distrust pharmacists, but I have very little trust in our pharmaceutical companies.
Representative Clouston, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll just give everyone a little history on the committee. So some of our small towns don't have a lot of physicians to give these immunizations, vaccines. So that was the thinking of taking from age 7 to age 3. The main part of this bill is this is an update to the Practice Act for the pharmacist, and that's the really important part of this bill. Now, in committee, without this amendment, I think this whole Practice Act would have died. So I'm going to support my committee's decision that we leave it at the age 7. So I'm going to fight this amendment. I understand the reason for bringing it, but again, the important part is the Practice Act. And our committee decided to move this bill forward, we would have this amendment on there. So I'm going to support my committee.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Washut, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment. As our availability of healthcare professionals continues to shrink in our state, we're going to hit a point where we have no choice but to look to those professionals who have been trained to provide a variety of services. And we've looked at this through the years at, different professional groups, and we've gradually increased their scope of practice out of necessity more than anything else. And to me, this is completely voluntary. A parent doesn't have to take their 4-year-old to a pharmacist to get a vaccine if this passes. Completely voluntary. If they want to take them to their pediatrician or someplace else, they certainly can do that. But it gives folks an option in communities where there might be very few options. And so I'm on and for this amendment.
Representative Yin.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So pharmacists can currently, at age 3, because of federal law, give a flu vaccine or a COVID shot because of federal law. So it's already allowed for those 2 shots. What we're doing is in the original engrossed version of the bill is allowing pharmacists to give all immunizations between that age 3 and 7. So expanding more on what federal law already does for our pharmacists. So the question before you isn't whether an mRNA vaccine is good or bad. It's do we want to add another trusted provider that we trust to administer immunizations? So I live pretty much next door. So you have the library on one side. I actually have a strip mall with the pharmacy that I go to on the other side. They're my pharmacists. You know what they don't do is they don't do mRNA vaccines because they don't trust them. And I think that's fine for that pharmacist to not administer mRNA vaccines. I get my flu shot from there all the time. So it shouldn't be a question of, oh, I don't like specific types of vaccines, so I'm not going to let pharmacists do it. We let a lot of providers already do it that we trust. This basically just says between that 3 and 7 range, we also trust pharmacists because I trust my neighborhood pharmacists to administer vaccines to those children between that age of 3 and 7.
Representative, any other members for your first time? Representative Ottman, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just some comments on that, I'm on that committee. The question, and I'm against lowering the age to 3, so against the amendment. But what I will say is that when you open up any sort of aspirins or vaccines or whatever you do, there are pages and pages and pages of things that you need to look at and understand if you're going to be well informed about that. And what I'll say is that when a 7-year-old gets a vaccine or a shot of any sort, they're able to say, my arm hurts, I don't feel good, I'm not hungry, my stomach's upset, this burns. They're able to say that. And what we heard in committee was a mother that said she was not going to get her children vaccinated, and then because of some circumstances she needed to. So they went in and said, well, you're 3 behind, so you just want to get them. And she said, yes. Boom. That was the problem. So it's not that we don't trust our pharmacy people or that we think they're bad people. This is a bad idea. If some of the required, in my town, it's all over the billboards. Come get it free, come get it free, come get it free. And the trust is there. But to say that a conglomeration of vaccines cannot be detrimental is an inaccurate statement. And also, we need to be very, very careful when the protocols have gone from 3 or 5, 12 years ago up to 18 for children to get different types of things for sexual transmitted diseases and stuff like that before they're even able to walk. That is a bit scary. So I'm just going to say it's a good bill, but the push to lower this to 3 years old, not for the benefit, but for the convenience of it, I believe is wrong and could be dreadfully wrong with the reactions that these children can and some do have. So I would just say aye on the bill, yes on the bill, and no on the amendment.
Representative Campbell, your first time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a quick question for the proponents of this amendment because I need a little bit of clarity. As I see this, one of the intentions of this bill is to have our rural communities that don't have healthcare access be able to get these child immunizations locally. And I understand the intent of it, but I do have some concerns. My question would be, are our pharmacists, because I know pharmacists are trained in medicines, but do they have the training to give these injections to these younger people? Because there is some special training required with that. And then my next question would be, do they have the staffing to accommodate these situations? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Heft, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to resist this amendment. I trust a pediatrician far more than a pharmacist when it comes to vaccinations. Let's not confuse convenience with safety. Let's be very careful with this, and thank you.
Representative Brown, your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I appreciate the comments from the representative out of Camelland about getting a compromise bill out here. And I'm tending to lean in that direction, that I'm probably not going to support this amendment strictly based on the fact that I prefer to see this Practice Act updated, right? What we're trying to do is actually update a much broader discussion here. And if the hangup is the year 3 versus year 7, and we've been living with year 7 for X amount of years, I'd say we're probably going to be okay not changing that down to 3. On the kicker, for me on this, is some of these outerlying communities, to the representative who brought this up from the eastern side of the state, that is exactly what we're trying to do with this amendment, is say, hey, look, if you do have, if we allow doctors, right, and make no mistake about this, these pharmacists are doctors. They're doctors of pharmacy. They're just not doctors of medicine. They can't, two totally different scopes of practice, but they are doctors. They go to a graduate level program, and they are actually the ones that know legitimately, in my opinion, from the experience that I've had with these doctors and pharmacists, they actually have more understanding of contraindications and stuff like that than most doctors do when it comes to some of these things. So most of these pharmacists are going to be in a heck of a lot better position to make these types of judgment calls than, oh, well, I only trust a pharmacist, or I only trust a pediatrician to give this. I want to be clear, these pharmacists are doctors as well. If the hangup is going to be the 3 versus 7, I'm not here to die on that hill. I think that there's far more and far better implications for this bill at the end of the day, but I do worry about what we have talked about on this floor numerous times in just 20 odd days, is that we have a lack of medical professionals in this state. And here we're trying to open up and say, hey, look, if you live in a rural part of the state and you need to get your 3 or 4-year-old vaccinated, and you choose to, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a government mandate. This is an adult making a decision for their child, and they've made that adult decision for their child, and they feel comfortable with a pharmacist providing that. I don't understand why government's infringing on that opportunity. I feel like that's a step a little bit too far as well. If we're trying to make this a convenience, and I understand the convenience for safety, I trust my pharmacist just as much as I trust my doctors. They're the ones that prescribe the drugs and bring them out to you. They're the ones that take care of this kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, I appreciate the discussion. I think this is good policymaking. I think this is what we should debate. These are the types of things that should not be down, the 26-34 votes that we see. So I appreciate the debate, but at the end of the day, I'm probably going to lean on the man from the Camel Land who said there's far better implications to this bill than just getting from 3 to 7. So.
Thank you, Representative. Any other members for your first time on the amendment? Senate File 121. Seeing none, second time. Representative Larson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the good committee that heard this bill and made the recommendation to get it out onto the floor. But they're just 7. And we're 62, and that's the rationale behind my bringing this, is because maybe as a whole, we think that was a step too far. And in my mind, as we hear from this various microphones repeatedly, that we don't like government stepping in on our personal choices, then we come and say, for a profession that is licensed and has the ability and currently can give shots, we won't allow them to give immunizations. And for why? Now, we've heard that we trust pharmacists. Good, we should. We just don't trust pharmaceuticals. Well, so that mistrust would then apply across all the medical professions and not just with the pharmacist. I trust my pharmacist, as do I. And so when the pharmacist prescribes a medication to your child, you go to when the pediatrician prescribes a prescription to your child, you go to the pharmacist, who then has a responsibility to educate you on the use of that medication because of their knowledge And so we have that trust in them, but we're not going to trust them to give an immunization. Now, if they don't want to give an immunization, the pharmacist isn't required to. But rather, maybe if you've got a pharmacist in your community, it saves you from driving 30 miles to your primary care provider, or 50 miles, or something of that nature. So it is a convenience thing, and it is even more important to me, it's a personal choice thing. Why are you taking away my choice as a parent to determine where my child receives these immunizations? And I appreciate Big Brother wanting to protect me again, but I don't know that the risk is really there. It is a good bill, and I appreciate the work that's been done on it, and I really appreciate the committee letting the bill come forward to hear it. I just think that this standing committee amendment decided by 7 really warranted another conversation by 62. So I'd encourage an aye vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Members, you're voting on second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 121. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment has not been adopted. Second reading amendment, not adopted. Okay, and that's it. So Senate File 121, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Okay, probably better break before we start the next one.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we stand in recess until 2 p.m.
You've heard the motion. Any committee announcements? Representative Washut, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your conference committee on Senate File 88 will be meeting immediately upon adjournment in PMR 2.
Thank you, Chairman. Any others? That's it. Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 2 appropriations will be meeting with their Senate counterparts in room E301 and online in 30 minutes at 12:30 to discuss interim topics.
Thank you. Representative Brown, please.
Mr. Speaker, just a notification for everybody here. I've been receiving a few text messages from some friends that are downstairs in W54 and 55 or whatever it is down there. But the American Cancer Society is here today, and they are providing us lunch, and they're asking for me to make sure that everybody knows that we've got some lunch down there, and they'd love to chat with you.
Thank you, Representative. Any others? Okay, I have one announcement here. Please pay attention to this. On behalf of the Catholic Diocese of Cheyenne, Catholic Charities of Wyoming, and St. Mark's Episcopal Church, and in gratitude for your service, talking to you guys, ladies and gentlemen, to the people of the state of Wyoming, you are all invited to an end of session ecumenical Christian prayer service tomorrow at 7 a.m. at St. Mark's, which is located at 1908 Central Avenue. There will be coffee and light breakfast items after the service as we gather in the fellowship hall. So, and if you have any information or any concerns or questions that you'd like to have some more information on, please encourage to contact Deacon Mike Lehman, 307-630-4134. If you don't have that number, I will keep it here on the dais, and I will announce this again before we adjourn this evening. So with that, no other announcements. You have heard the majority floor leader. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. We will stand in recess until 2 p.m.